Homi, welcome again to the show. This is a brief exchange on our latest data. Homi, welcome again.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Homi, last week was a special week for World Data Lab. Not the first time, but we were extremely prominent in the Economist. Even if you opened, I think, the website of the Economist, we were on the front page on an insight that we created why inequality is better than expected in the world. Tell us about the work you did with Jesus Crespo and Shuraf Suman.
Well, I think it was interesting because last week, of course, was when there was this big gathering at Davos, and all of the world's billionaires were there. There have been lots of discussions about the growing inequality as just a few people seem to control these big gains that have been happening on artificial intelligence and other elements of the digital economy. So I think that there's been a lot of conversation about how much worse inequality is getting and how much more concentrated wealth is getting in the world. And we at World Data Lab did some numbers because we now have data that covers every country in the world, and asked a fairly simple question, not so much about the inequality of income and wealth, but about the inequality of consumption. And that's a question which is what's really happening to people at the bottom of the distribution. In our case, we measured the ratio of the bottom 50% of the poorest people in the world. How much are they consuming compared to the top 10%? It's a fairly standard ratio of inequality, a measure of inequality in economics. And to our surprise, what we found was actually there's a very substantial trend to show that things are getting better. And if you step back a little bit and you say, well, how could this be true? The answer is quite straightforward. It's that you still have a lot of relatively poor people, relative compared to the living conditions of people in, say, Europe or the United States or Japan, but very large numbers in India, in China, in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and a few other countries around the world, which are growing quite rapidly. And these countries are getting the benefits of global growth, of trade, of having done things to fix their own economies. And what we used to call trickle down is actually trickling down, but more than trickling, it's a decent flood. And so the strength of this has really been, I think, quite dramatic, and that's what I think has generated the interest. And we did various things. We broke it down into is this. We showed that the what was driving this trend was the fact that these poorer countries were catching up, and then we showed that, well, yes, but within each country you have a very mixed picture. So you do have some countries like the United States where even consumption inequality appears to be getting worse. But these are smaller numbers and they're balanced by other countries where consumption inequality is getting better. So what we've called that within country inequality component was actually fairly stable once you aggregate across all countries over time.
Brilliant, Homi. I want to pick up on two things. One, obviously, both stories could still be true and are probably true, right? Wealth inequality is getting bigger, but spending inequality, consumption inequality is getting better if you want to have a more equal world. Give us a perspective on both measures, and why would you argue that this consumption inequality and the lens of consumption is at least as important as the one conventionally debated in Davos and elsewhere?
The thing about the wealth inequality is that it's very difficult to get measures of wealth that are consistent. So, are we talking about pre-tax wealth or post-tax wealth? And most people have their wealth in financial assets, and there are some tax obligations associated with those if you sell. So, how do you compute those if you have a several different houses? Uh, you can't be living in all of them at the same time. So there are several of those kinds of things that make the wealth comparisons across countries uh, somewhat, I would say, you can get an order of magnitude, but those metrics tend to be a little bit more imprecise. Whereas spending is something where national statistical offices actually do some hard, serious work. That's where we at World Data Lab get most of our numbers. And there one can see different groups, different people, and you can identify, individuals, households, etc. Even in wealth, if you've got a pension fund, for example, that's holding a lot of wealth, do you try to say, well, every member person who has a piece of that pension fund, has a bit of wealth, or so you see what I mean? It's just not quite as straightforward, other than to say, we know a few people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk are billionaires, or etc. So when you're looking for a whole distribution, I think looking at consumption is a something. And ultimately, if you're thinking about the welfare of the world and how well are people doing in the world, it's all about their consumption and whether they have the ability to survive and thrive and take vacations and send their children to school and have decent health care and real things, I would say.
The real things. That's brilliant, Homie. And these are the real things that we do indeed measure and work with many companies and policymakers together. On the other point, I want to briefly come to, Homie, because that was indeed a surprise, where the within country inequality is gotten slightly better or rather stable, and you have some countries that are getting worse, others getting better. What would be the insight that countries within country inequality would get better? What are the stories behind those also positive developments?
So most countries have some kind of fiscal mechanisms for changing the distribution of consumption, of the distribution between uh, income and consumption. So you have both taxes and you have the ways in which governments spend money. And governments, for example, in Europe, where you are, Wolfgang, uh, healthcare is largely free. It's provided by the government. You probably spend very little out of pocket on healthcare for your family. Similarly with education. So the way in which governments spend money, and governments have lots of programs for taking care of people who are somewhat poorer in their countries. The way governments spend money tends to be a very powerful force in changing the distribution of spending and how spending within any country gets allocated. And that's why it's a force that only operates within a country, because all of those programs accrue to the citizens of that country. And they vary a lot depending on which country you're in. So historically, Scandinavian countries have been much more generous and more progressive in these kinds of programs. Countries like the United States have been slightly less, somewhat less progressive on that side. They have lower tax rates. So you have lots of those kinds of things that change the distribution of income before you get to the distribution of spending.
Mm. Brilliant, Homie. So as we close this part, just some final takeaways or what you think this contribution, which also be published, I think, in Brookings now, can make to the discussion. Do you think there can be one can nudge a bit how people think about the world and inequality, and any other takeaways you want to leave the audience with?
I think the principal takeaway is that despite all of the angst, if you will, about
Mm,
the global economy, and many people feeling that the global economy is just not doing well and isn't really delivering. Uh, I think that that may be somewhat overstated. And that actually, in many of the most populous countries in the world, economies are actually doing quite well. The lives of people are getting better. Fewer people are in extreme poverty, and the ones that have escaped extreme poverty now have improved financial health, actual physical health. Life expectancies are getting better. They're moving to cities. They're getting jobs. They're taking vacations. More people are just enjoying the kind of material benefits of economic prosperity than ever before. And that's a very good trend. And what we saw in these numbers is that it's a very powerful trend that isn't really affected by these day to day fluctuations. Just coming back to this discussion
mm,
we had on wealth, I mean, if you were to have, you know,
mm,
looked at wealth and the wealth in cryptocurrencies or the wealth in gold. I mean, one day you have one valuation, the next day, literally in one day, I think with gold and silver, something like $3 trillion in the world of wealth was wiped out. So there's huge volatility in these
mm,
measures that you don't see on the consumption side. So
mm, mm,
keep your eyes focused on the basics. Things are getting better despite all the this kind of upheaval that we're seeing. And I think that many of the new technologies that are being introduced can be now introduced into other countries as well. And when we say this inequality is getting better, what we really mean is that a range of countries are now starting to use global best practice technologies in their own economies, and that's lifting them up.
mm,
The improvement in inequality is not because some countries are getting poorer, it's because other countries are getting richer. And
mm,
that's a good thing.
mm. Well, Paul, thanks so much, Homi. Indeed, the rich are still doing fine, but also the poor are fortunately doing good. And if you want to understand more about the data, contact us at World Data Lab. We'll happy to help you to understand the future and the role that consumption plays. Thank you so much, Homi.
Thank you.